Okay, moving on to how about taking a bus?
These days, you use something called
Card.
the T-Money card or other types of cards, credit cards. But when I was in high school, I used to buy these things called 승차권 or 회수권.
Okay.
Yeah, 승차 means
To get on a
yeah,
car, vehicle?
yeah, boarding a vehicle. 회수 is to retrieve something. So it's a ticket that you actually give to some other people who will retrieve your tickets.
So there would person who's receiving that?
Yeah,
Other than the driver?
No, the driver has a box next to the driving seat, and then he would actually
you put it in it.
yeah, examine like if you're actually putting in your ticket. So the 회수권s, when I was in high school, like 18 years ago, they cost $1.8. So 1,801.
180원?
No, 1,801.
1,800원.
1,800원
네.
for 10 copies.
10 copies.
So one bus ride was 181 back then. Nowadays it's 1,051. Right?
For one ride.
Yeah,
For a single ride.
Yeah, 1,051. So back then, even only like 18 years ago, it was really, really cheap.
Really
More than
cheap.
5 times as cheap. 180원. And before, when I was in middle school, it used to be like 50원, 51. So just looking at the price changes for the bus fees, you can see how things have become really, really like more expensive.
I didn't even know the word 회수권.
Yeah.
I remember like hearing the word 회수권 or like token, which is
token.
like a specially made coin
Yeah.
only for bus ride.
Yeah, which are not used anymore.
Not anymore.
They're smaller than they're the size of the 50원 coins
50원
these
coin,
days.
really, really small.
And they have a hole in the center. They are only used for bus rides, and they're only used by usually adults because it's more expensive than the 회수권s. The tokens were like something like 200원.
Oh.
So yeah.
So when I was like old enough to take a bus by myself, I heard the word tokens and stuff, but I didn't really use them. I just paid with cash. And that was the only option I had. But like in middle school, I think, or high school, they started to use the card. So that's the thing these days.
Yeah,
Everyone uses the card and it's really convenient.
Yeah.
So yeah, things have changed that way. And speaking of the price, like prices in general has changed a lot.
That's right. It's just crazy how more expensive things have got in Korea. Excuse me.
Okay. You're too
I'm
sad.
Old. I'm old Korea.
I know.
So, like before, maybe 100 years ago, general average wage that Korean average worker would get from their employer would be something like 31.
30원, 40원?
Yeah, 41, like less than 100 years ago. But these days it's like a lot more than that, as you know, and thousands of dollars, of course. But yeah, other than that, I mean, even in addition to that, like even within our lifetime, things have changed so much.
I remember like buying a pack of snack, 과자, or ice cream, even ice cream. 300원 is normal.
Yeah.
And 500원 is very kind of fancy ones.
Yeah.
And 700원 is really, really like fancy, delicious ones. But these days, 700원 is the cheapest one. And like 1,000원, easily 1,000원. You can do really not many things with a 1,000원 bill.
Yeah. As a child, I remember, I don't remember the face of this ajashi, but I remember this particular ajashi that would sometimes visit my parents, my father's friend or something. He would always bring this 선물 세트.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
full of snacks.
Yeah, full package of snacks, and it would be this big, like a huge box of maybe 5 different snacks in plastic bags, and maybe 2 different types of paper case snacks, and maybe 3 other stuff that are small. So it had like 10 different stuff, different items, and I would actually snack on those for maybe a month or so. So it was a huge present. So I remember that being the ideal present for me, and it was back then really expensive because you know it was a big box. And I asked my mom, and she told me that it was like something like 2,000원 or 3,000원, $2 or $3. But these days, one bag of chips can be 2,000원 or 3,000원.
3,000원.
Yeah, so things are a lot more expensive now.
I remember my dad was telling me that how he was like doing his best to raise me and my brother like well, and he would say, oh, like there's this really expensive bakery and I always dropped by there and bought this really expensive castera, like the sponge cake kind of thing, and it would cost like this much. I'm like, that's nothing. But he would tell me how much he was getting paid like 20 years ago. I was shocked because it feels like it's only 20 years ago, but the sense of money, like how expensive or cheap things are, has totally changed.
Exactly. And also, a good example is when my parents got married 35 years ago in 1980, the same year I was born in. They had to get a loan from the government, which is really, really common in Korea for newlyweds. And
to get a house or to rent a house.
Exactly. So I don't know if it was the entire amount they needed for the house or it was a part of the loan they needed. But anyway, they got a loan of $8,000.
Which is about 800만 won.
Yeah, these days. I mean, in Korean won. So $8,000 to rent an apartment, a small apartment for themselves and my grandmother, 3 people, and then like later on we ended up being 6 people because there were 3 kids in the apartments. So yeah, $8,000. That is not like a huge sum of money these days, but back then, 35 years ago, it was so huge that it took my mom 20 years to pay back. Over 20 years, she paid back little by little. I mean, the contract said that you cannot pay in advance. You have to pay like little by little. And actually the interest that she paid on top of the original fund was a lot more. It was $20,000.
2천만 won.
Yeah, because she was paying it back over 20 years.
Wow.
So, but these days, even with all the money combined, you cannot like get an apartment. So, like think about it, like $8,000 you pay back over 20 years. So it's a huge difference.
So back then it was a huge money.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is how boys were more loved by their parents over girls.
Yeah, I think it might be actually common even today.
But things have changed definitely. Like it might still exist, especially among like grandparents.
Yeah. But by the actual parents who just gave birth to a child, either a son or daughter, they don't really have any like preference. Yeah, I mean they might want another one of a different gender. But I mean, if they want to have one kid, it doesn't really matter whether it's.
They might have like a personal preference, like some
that's
moms want daughters, but like not by the standard that we used to have.
Yeah, not a social preference, but maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Definitely, boys were more.
Yeah. My grandfather died in the Korean War, and my father is the only son in the family, the youngest one. So I can clearly imagine my grandmother and of course my grandfather when he was alive, trying to get a son. So my father was the result of their efforts to please get a son. And then my father and my mother gave birth to me, the first son, and then they were trying to get another son. So the second one was a daughter. Of course, they didn't mind. But then the third one, they hoped that the third one would be a son. So they even made a son's name. And then, like, when the baby turned out to be a daughter, they were like, okay, it will be just be a happy family of 6 people. But a lot of families actually used to try hard to get their first son or another son.
As if it works. I mean, maybe there are some herbal medicine or something.
Yeah, it's actually really random.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it really works. But like Hyuna said, like in my generation, having a boy or like having an only child is totally common. Like having an only daughter child is
totally common.
Yeah, totally common, and it's not really like, oh, you only have a girl.
Yeah, it's not a tragedy.
Yeah, but like in maybe my mom's and my father's generation, like they would feel obligated to have a son to birth.
Yeah.
But even for my grandma and my grandpa's generation, it's even more strict that they would have a girl maybe, and then they would name the daughter something boyish, so that they would have the next one son. So it's really, really common to have really uncommon names for our like grandmas and grandpas for that reason. And you will see a lot of daughter son because they would try until they have son, and sons were much more cherished, and they would have better education. My mom and my dad both had equal education, but for my grandma's generation, I'm not sure if my grandma went to school even.
Yeah, I don't
It was
think,
really common that daughters weren't sent to school because they felt that they don't need to study.
Yeah, they
only
just
guys
have to cook
need to study.
and, have babies.
Yeah. And another thing about like having a baby, these days, like not having a baby is also common. Just one baby is the most common.
Yeah.
In my generation, 2 or 3 were most common.
Yeah.
My mom has 6 older siblings.
Yeah.
My dad has 7 older siblings.
Yeah.
So it was
Very
different. Yeah.
So families are becoming smaller and smaller these days, and also I guess until maybe 10, 20 years ago it was a little more common, not like really common, but a little more common than now to have like to find out that it's going to be a daughter and they have an abortion because they don't want another daughter. So it used to be common, but it's now becoming like less common, and it became actually it was illegal. It used to be illegal to tell the expecting parents whether it's a daughter or son, and until like a certain date. But now the law has been like lifted. But yeah, so those things happened in the past. Any other things that we can compare?
How the children grow up is different from the past. Like I feel like these days kids only play with their computers or like smartphones.
Yeah, I think it might be the same with other
other countries.
But just from our experiences, I remember just playing with dirt all the time and just climbing like these like random hills, like mountains every day. And
we would catch dragonflies a lot. And I remember there was this hill behind my house, and in the winter we would just fly over the snow.
So there was definitely a lot more nature outdoor activities. But now it's like you're not going to see any child that is younger than maybe 10 years old, or even 10 years old, 9 years old, walking alone to the convenience store, or even just going anywhere by like him or herself. They're always accompanied by some teacher, by some nanny, by some parent. So I think it's becoming a lot more uncommon to see children playing together these days. I see a child, like immediately look for their parents, like because I feel so scared for the child. Like why is the child alone?
Here, and like the only place they can play outside is like set like atmosphere, like playground in a apartment or in a school. But when we grew up,
there were no like apartments playgrounds. They were like playgrounds for children from anywhere, and I would walk like for like an hour to go to this particular playground that I liked.
Yeah, wow.
By myself when I was like 6 years old, and then I would just walk, fall, then walk.
Well, I remember having an apartment playground when I was growing up, but I don't think our parents didn't even know what playground was with like stuff.
That's right. Like, I mean, when I was young, I would just tell my grandmother, 나갔다 올게요. Like, well, 놀다 올게요. I'll go play and come back. And then I would be out for like 4 or 5 hours by myself. But then these days, it's becoming really, really uncommon.
And you will hear some moms screaming, 현우야, 저녁 먹자! In the apartment. Because we would just, play outside.
Yeah. So that was...
these days, I don't know.
Something that is definitely different between old and new Korea.
Yeah, and is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, technology-wise, I don't think we can actually make it specific to Korea because, internet happened pretty much in the same way in any country. The mobile technology revolution has happened in the same way. So those things are the same. But yeah, like generally, like in the past 30, 40 years, things have changed.
Oh, I remember one thing that you told me, that you didn't really buy bottled water. There was no bottled water. Yeah,
people used to actually, like, I used to go with my grandmother, like until when I was like 15 years ago, like 20 years ago, go to this neighborhood springs, like natural springs.
Which is usually called 약수터. 약 means medicine.
Or 샘. And then just get water from the natural spring and just drink it from there, like no filter, no boiling. I would just drink it from there. Everybody did. Like, everybody in the neighborhood do that. Like everybody would have this spring that they can get all their water. It's a water source, right? But these days people just buy water because there's no place to go to get clean enough water. So bottled water was introduced to Korea in 1988.
Again?
With the Seoul Olympics. Like athletes from other countries, of course, were visiting Korea, but then they wanted to drink water, and they didn't have any like bottled water that they can buy in convenience stores and stuff. Like there were no convenience stores, so they brought some of their water with them, and like that was the first time that bottled water was found in Korea. But these days, people buy bottled water all the time. Like you can get this much water delivered to your house for free. If you have a contract, like this is like $5, and this is enough for like 2 weeks.
Delivery.
Yeah, and for a small family. So yeah.
Wow, that was really interesting because I cannot remember any.
So the point of this video, like everything that you see in Korea, everything that people take for granted might have not existed 10 years ago.
Or 20 years ago, yeah.
Korea has experienced a very compressed development. So things have come and gone and changed a lot and come into existence really, really quickly. So just, sometimes question things a little bit, like, did you always have that? Or like, was it always around?
It's something even we experience, like, from time to time, like when we talk to someone older than us.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's like, people taking YouTube HD videos for granted when like 3 years ago HD was like, wow, amazing,
Or even like for my grandma, when I talk to her, like it's really interesting. She like even eggs were expensive in the past. So she's like, oh, 계란은 더 먹어.
That's right. Yeah.
And ramen was not really common when she were like younger. So she thinks ramen is a very special food.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it.
That's it. Always good to know some history, and we'll be back with another Ask Hyojin.
네, 여러분 다음 시간에 봐요.
안녕히 계세요. Middle schools or high schools for lectures, and also meet with lots of middle school and high school teachers. And I see that the classrooms are a lot more like spacious.